step away or take a phone call, or the doorbell rings, whatever the case might be. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Walker. Dr. Walker?
Okay, well, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everybody. So before we get started into this presentation, I feel like I should give you my spiel about career services because some of you all may not be aware. So Durham Tech has a career services department, and just as a FYI, as a Durham Tech student, you have access to using our resources. And so even after you complete your program, whatever field it may be into, and you're getting ready to start your career, you can still utilize us as well. So career services, we're located physically on in the Wynn Center, which is building 10 on the first floor. However, as for this semester, due to COVID and whatnot, we are doing virtual appointments. And so at the end of this presentation, I'll have a slide with how to get in contact and to make an appointment with Career Services to get assistance. So just a little bit about what we do at Career Services. I would say the most popular thing by far is help to review resumes, but we're not just limited to that. So we do help review resumes. So if you are ready, if you have an interview lined up, or if you found a position that you'd like to apply to, whether it's part-time, full-time, or internship, and you need help with your resume, you need a human looking over it to make sure that it's good enough to use to apply. Please feel free to make an appointment with Career Services, and we'll be glad to help you edit that resume and put you in the most positive light. In addition to that, we have a job and internship board. So let me back up a little bit and say that in order to get to, the way to get to Career Services websites is just type in durhamtech.edu/career. Or if you go to the main Durham Tech website, there will be a link, maybe an inch of the way down, that says career, and that'll get you onto our website. From there, you will be able to make appointments and view our job and internship board. So speaking of job and internship board, that is another feature that we have at Career Services. So not only do we help with resumes and career letters, as Dr. Sessoms talked about earlier, cover letters, sorry. We also have a job and internship board where when companies want to hire Durham Tech students, they basically contact me. And they say, we have this position available. We want this to get the word to get out to Durham Tech students so that we can hire you all. So what I do is I usually have those employers post on our job and internship board. Our job and internship board is called the College Central Network. And, I, as a Durham Tech student, you have access to it free of charge. All you would need to do is, if you have never been on the job board before, you'll have to activate your account. You'll use your Connect Mail email address, and you would create an account. And then from there, you would be able to search and apply to jobs and internships in all fields, locally, nationally, maybe even internationally. But that's where we house our jobs and internships. So not only do we do resume reviews, cover letter reviews, we also do help with mock interviews. So of course, today we're going to be talking about interviewing, but if it comes to the point where you do have an interview lined up and you need to practice, because practicing is a major part of interviewing, you have to practice it. You can't just wing it and do well. Then we will be glad to do a practice interview with you. We will do it virtually. And, what we'll do is you'll set an appointment with us. I'll ask you, what kind of jobs are you looking for? We'll make sure to cater different questions depending on whatever your job field is. And then we'll ask you questions, and then we'll be taking down notes, taking down what you said, and then we'll go over what you said at the end, and then you can feel free to ask questions, and we'll provide comment and suggestions. So take advantage of all this. I'm telling you all this because, to be completely honest, myself, along with different career services colleagues such as myself, we could charge hundreds of dollars for this. In fact, some have side businesses where they do charge hundreds of dollars for this. But as a Durham Tech student, you get access to this for free. That is a benefit of being a Durham Tech student. So if I were you, I would take advantage of that because, hey, who wants to spend money if you don't have to? And then you'll get the help you need. So that's my spiel about career services. At the end of this presentation, I will have a slide with our contact information and how to find us. But yeah, so we're going to get on to the interviewing part of our presentation. So if you have any questions, what I'm going to do is throughout this presentation, I will pause to check to see if anybody has any questions, and then I'll try to answer them as best as I can. So you can put them in the chat, but I'll be stopping several times to make sure that there are any questions from anybody. Okay, so with interviewing, everybody has to do it. So think back to when you had to interview for a position. What did that interview look like? Was it not a formal interview where you would just walk up, and fill out an application and turn it in, and they asked you, well, when can you work? And that was your interview. Was it something that, you set an appointment for, and then you came back, and it was an hour long or 2 hours long? It might have been something like that. Or it might have been an all-day deal. I've been on interviews where they have been completely all day. I'm talking about from breakfast to through lunch, and then you're done at 2 o'clock that afternoon. So, just think back to when that first interview was. Like, how did you feel about that? Like, was it kind of nerve-wracking? I will tell you personally, and when I go through this presentation, I'm not going to give you any advice that I would not give a family member. I will, things that I've personally been through and things that I've seen in interviews, this is what I'm going to advise you, like the do's and don'ts. So just think of it as like, I'm not going to tell you anything that I would not tell a family member. But I will tell you personally that when I interview for positions, it's just a nerve-wracking situation. And everybody gets nervous. I want you to know that it is okay to be nervous. It is okay because it's actually kind of expected. But the way that I have gotten better in interviews, and I'm not going to say that I'm 100% great in interviews, but like the way that I've gotten better is practicing and planning. That's really the big things. You've got to know and prep ahead of time what you're going to say. You'll want to have like a memory bank of situations that you've been through, which we'll get into a little later. But have a memory bank of situations that you've been through that you can pull from. So you do have to practice. It's not something that you can wing. But what I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger, is that when you are on an interview, it's not only that person interviewing you, you as the candidate need to interview the employer as well. And that's in any job field that you go to. I wish somebody would have told me this when I was younger. It would have saved me a lot of stress and anxiety. But just you have to be able to ask the employer certain questions and take cues, context clues, whether it's the environment or the demeanor of the people that are interviewing you. Take those context clues into consideration, because it's not only them interviewing you, firing questions off at you. You also need to interview the employer and see if that's the right fit for you. So yes, everybody does get nervous, but that's normal. I'm going to try to give you some strategies to make things a little less nerve-wracking. So what does the interviewer want to know about you? Really, I have these bullets here, but the most important thing I think is the fourth bullet down, which is, will you fit into the organizational culture? This is what they will want to know about you in whatever industry it is. Because, I mean, they will want to know, yes, they want to make sure that you know how to do the job, of course. And they want to know, are you motivated? Are you applying for this job just because you saw the opening and you're applying to everything? Or are you applying for it because you really, really want it? And the questions that they ask as interviewers, they will be able to pick that apart based off of how you answer the questions. So they'll be able to see through it if you don't want to apply for that and you just, turn something in just to apply to something. But the fitting into the organizational culture is going to be important because, let's face it, if you're working with an organization 40 or more hours a week, you want to make sure that it's a decent situation, because if you're going to be with somebody that long, like, why be miserable? And so they're going to be looking at that. And again, they will want to know that you are sincerely interested in this job. I will tell you that there has been talk in the news about a great resignation. You might have heard that term in the news, because what the great resignation is that due to the pandemic and the lockdown that we were in a couple years ago, and a lot of other factors, people are finding that they are resigning from their jobs because they find that it's not a good fit. But I do want to be upfront with you and say that the great resignation for a lot of people or a lot of companies is for these hourly positions. Retail, food service, maybe hospitality. But I will say that if you are looking for a position that's not in those areas, something that you will need some kind of certification or degree to work in, I don't think there's a big great resignation with that. I really don't. I know a lot of recruiters. I know a lot of employers, and don't get it twisted. There are still positions that have 100 applications per job. There are still positions that have 50 applications per job. And I'm not saying this to intimidate you or make you feel, stress you out. That's not my intention. But again, I'm talking to you like I would talk to a family member. And these companies are going to want to know that you are sincerely interested in that job. And if it's 50 people applying for a job and they get the impression that you're not in it, you're just applying for something, they will be able to tell that a mile away. So, just kind of keep that in mind. These are the kinds of things that the interviewer will want to know about you. Okay. So how to prepare, how to get ready. So you'll want to do some soul searching, and it may be that you get a notebook or a journal or even just a scratch sheet of paper and realize what you can offer the employer, because really it's going to be about them. Like, you need to be aware of the qualities and the experiences and the skills that you can offer the employer. So that's going to call for you reviewing your resume or your application, because whatever's on your resume or your application, whatever's put on there is fair game. So I would not want you to get in an interview situation where it's deer in headlights. They ask you questions deer in headlights because you forgot you put something on your resume. I will tell you a true story. So this was way back in the day. I was looking for a position in engineering. So I'm a former engineer. I'm a job changer. And I remember that I put, at the time, I was pretty good Spanish speaker. I've lost a lot of it, but I was a pretty good Spanish speaker. So I put on my resume that, basic conversational Spanish. So I remember going to this job fair, and I had it on my resume. So I handed out the resume to the employer, and he looked at the resume, he read the resume, and then he started speaking to me in Spanish. And luckily I knew what he was saying. But then, if you don't, I'm telling you this to say, whatever's on your resume is fair game. Okay, so, and then you'll want to research the employer. Make sure that you research the employer and find out what qualities or what things they do, if they produce something or if they help people, like what makes them special. And then practice for the interview, which can include the mock interviews that I was talking about. Okay, so let's talk about some basics. The first thing is that you want to make sure to have a professional email address and a professional voicemail. So professional email address, when in doubt, use your Connect Mail and have it forwarded to your Gmail account. I have seen lots, I've been on lots of search committees through my years in career services. I've seen lots of resumes, and nobody wants to have a resume with an email that's derogatory. And y'all know what some of them are, like, no, and not necessarily derogatory, but just like not professional. Like, if you have a hotmama@gmail.com or, don't have an email like that. Have something professional. Here's another basic. Again, this is me talking to a family member. And this is what I've learned. When you interview, you want to plan out what you will wear in advance, because the interview process is already stressful. Imagine you have an interview at 9 in the morning. You have to get up, you have to get, your situation together. You may have to take care of kids and walk the dog or whatever. And you do not want to be running through your closet at 8 o'clock trying to figure out something, or put on a pair of pants and it's like a hole in it, or, find out a shirt doesn't button up right, or, have to iron something. Plan out what you will wear the day in advance and like iron it, or, prepare it. Make sure that, make sure it fits, and, you want to alleviate the stress as much as you can. And then if you can arrive, I will say this. Another tip that I use is that if I have an interview in person and I don't know where it is, or it's in a building that I've never been before, I try to get out there the day before. Now, some may not have access to transportation, but if you can, try to get either a ride out there or drive out to the location the day in advance, because again, alleviating stress, you don't have to worry about getting lost. I will tell you, for this job, I had been past Durham Tech's campus a couple times, but I hadn't really been in a building. And I remember they told me my interview was in building 5. And so you better believe that day before, Dr. Sessom's laughing because she probably had that too. You better believe that day before, I at least drove out to the campus to see where building 5 was. I didn't go in, but at least, that I didn't have to worry about that. And you have to think about traffic as well too. So you'll want to make sure to arrive early, not an hour early, but I would say 30 to 20 minutes early, and be friendly to everybody. So I'm going to pause right here to see if we have any questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat. But can you just talk a little bit about the be friendly to everybody part real quick?
Okay.
And why that's important.
Okay. So you never know who knows who. And you never know, like, you shouldn't just assume that if somebody walks into a place and they have on a suit, then they are the CEO. And then if not, they might be, housekeeping staff. You've got to be nice to everybody, friendly, speak to everybody, because that goes a long way. I have personally seen interview situations where somebody was not friendly or was rude or was snappy to an administrative assistant, for example. And yeah, they put on the smiley face when they were talking to us, but then after they left, the administrative assistant was like, that person was not friendly at all. And that right there can make the difference, because, once you are there in person, and these are in-person interviews, you're pretty much on. So be sure to be friendly to everybody, whoever you encounter. It could be the housekeeper cleaning up the restroom that you stop by before you go. Just be friendly to everybody. So now we're going to get into the different types of interviews. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the most common types are going to be the phone or the virtual interview, and the on-site interview. So typically in like more corporate positions, they will have what's known as a screening interview. So just going to take a nice round number. Let's say it's one position, and let's say we have 100 applicants, right? Okay, I'm just using a round number. So let's say they go through the 100 resumes and they say, hey, these 10 resumes are the top 10. So we would like to do a screening interview with these top 10. And then out of that top 10, we'll bring in the top 5 for an interview and then offer the position to one person. So that screening interview where it's like it goes down from the 100 to the top 10, that's usually a screening interview, and it can be done via phone or via virtual. Now, of course, in 2022, where, the game has changed where there's a lot more virtual interviews for the entire process. But for the screening interview, it's usually an initial interview. It's usually 30 minutes. Maybe, and I'm just ballparking it here. A lot of times it's 20 minutes for them to ask you questions, 5 minutes for you to ask them questions, and then 5 minutes of buffer, because a lot of times they'll have back-to-back-to-backs. So the challenge is, if you have a phone interview, is of course they can't see you. So, it's hard for them to get a feel for your personality, because they can't see you. And you can't read the audience. It's not like being in the room with them where you can see people nodding and smiling or whatever when you answer your questions. But I do have some suggestions. So if this is a phone interview, dress professionally. I know that sounds weird, but dress professionally, because typically when you dress professionally, I know they can't see you, but you usually sit up straighter. Your posture's usually better. You probably project better. Your body just moves in a more, I don't know, like the energy, you just give a different energy. So I would say to dress professionally. And if it's a phone interview, yes, you can have note cards, but what you don't want to do is have this noise I'm making. You don't want it to be like that. You can have note cards. And also smile, even on the phone interview, because we've all gotten that customer service person who you can tell they are not happy on their job, and you can tell it. You can't see them, but you can tell they're not happy. And then we've gotten that customer service person at the cable company or whatever, and you call them, and they're smiling. You can tell they're smiling, and it's just more of a pleasurable experience. So you may want to do that. Of course, with the virtual interviews, which I'm going to get into in a second, there's some things you got to do, but that's on the next slide. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. But let's say you pass that screening interview and you're one of those top people that they want to bring in. So you may have an on-site interview, and it can be structured many different ways. You can, it can be one of those where it's only a couple of hours or 1 hour or 30 minutes, or it could be a whole afternoon. I will say that it is okay to repeat answers if you need to. You can repeat answers, that's fine. But really, the big thing is that you'll want to be prepared and research the company, and then know what you want to say, which we'll get into in a second. And then there are also things like panel interviews where it's not just a one-on-one kind of deal. You have, I don't know, 3 or more people sitting with you, and it's kind of like a panel, and it may feel kind of like a firing squad kind of deal, but it is okay to look at different people when you answer the questions. So it is okay to reuse those examples, and you'll also want to balance your eye contact. Now we're going to get into the virtual interview best practices. So, okay, so you want to make sure to know the platform. So if it's Zoom, I don't even want to assume everybody knows how to use Zoom, but I mean, that's one of the more popular ones. But then, we've got things like Microsoft Teams and WebEx and other kind of platforms may not be as ubiquitous as Zoom. So you'll want, when you get that link, they say, well, you have an interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. You get that, at least make sure that your laptop is charged, that it's, that it's nearby an area. You may even want to click on the link to make sure that it's choosing your right camera and your right microphone, and do all that stuff ahead of time, because you do not want to be stressed out when you're logging on and they can't hear you in an interview, or they can't see you, and that's just limited stress. Use a headset or earbuds if you can. And of course, virtually you'll want to dress professionally. I would do it from head to toe, because you never know what happens. You may have to get up, and nobody wants to see pajama bottoms. And you will want to make sure that it is in a professional and calm environment. I will say personally that if you don't have access to that, you can always use Durham Tech's library. You can go to the library and reserve a room, and you can conduct your interview in there, and it's quiet and it's professional, and it doesn't have you're not going to get interruptions or anything like that. So the library has done that. And actually, when we were on lockdown, the lockdown part of the pandemic, there were some times when some students contacted me and was like, I needed a place to interview, and the library was available. So I know they're available now. And so you'll want to make sure not to talk in your car or a moving vehicle, or while in motion in general. You don't want to just, be walking around the campus or walking around whatever, because of, connections. You never know how connections are going to be. And then with your environment, you want to be professional. You don't want, dogs barking, or, kids coming in, or constant interruptions. That's just going to throw you off your game. So those are the suggestions that I have for that. Okay, so what kind of questions are you going to get? You're going to get two sets of questions. You're going to get questions about yourself, and then you're going to get questions about the organization or the industry you're in. So as far as the questions about you, you're going to get those general ones. We're going to go over them in a second. Probing the resume. They're going to ask you things about your resume. You're going to talk about situational behavioral questions. We'll get into that as well. And then you may have a role player scenario. It just really depends on the field and on the company. But then you're also going to get questions about that industry and, why you're interested in working for that organization. So with that said, these are like the top 5 general questions you will probably get in an interview. I'm not going to say you're going to get all 5 in every interview, but you're going to get at least one of them. And so, we're going to go over each one of these, and I will give you some strategies on how to tackle them. Okay, the first one is tell me about yourself. Okay, I know that's it feels kind of awkward for some people. Really what that is an icebreaker. That's the purpose of it. It is an icebreaker. It's usually the first question. Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about yourself? And so really what you'll want to do, you don't want to get too deep into like your life story, but you do want to say something about as you can see, my name is such and such. As you can see from my resume, I am currently working at Target as a cashier. Prior to that, I worked as blah, blah, blah. I'm currently a student at Durham Tech studying such and such program. And, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for taking the opportunity to talk with me. So you'll want to say something like what you do, who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. So you can even say something to the effect of, I'm currently a student at Durham Tech in the such and such program, and upon graduation, I plan to, I'm looking for a position such as this where it would allow me to such and such and such. So you want to talk about who you are, where you've been, and where you'd like to go. Okay. It should be, don't get into the whole, I'm my hometown is such and such, and my parents got divorced when I was 6, and I have 3 brothers and a sister. Like, you don't want to get into personal things like that. But you'll want to just give a general view, because they're going to want to know about work. Okay. So walk me through your resume. Again, that's a situation where whatever's on your resume is fair game. So just be aware of what's on there. I would always bring extra, and this is when I'm in person, always bring extra copies of your resume, even though you may have given them one or multiple, still have extras. It never hurts. Why did you choose your program? Well, that's going to be different for everybody. So, you'll want to be as honest as you can. But I would not say, why did you choose your program? Oh, because such and such pays better. Like, don't say something like that. But, why did you choose a program? Well, I was thinking about becoming a nurse because, when I was in high school, my grandmother got really sick and I saw how the nurses tended to her, and I knew I wanted to give back, or something to that effect. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here. Everybody has their own reason. Everybody has their own reason, but so you can incorporate that. So what are your strengths and weaknesses? That is a super popular question. I probably get asked how to answer that a lot of times. So when you get asked, what are your strengths and weaknesses? You'll want to say, well, let's talk about strengths first. Everybody has strengths, and what you want to do is say what your strength is, and then give an example. Okay, so you want to say what the strength is and then give an example to support that. So you can say, one of my strengths is that I am very organized. For example, in such and such class, I was the one that always took notes in the group meetings. I always was the one to set the dates of the project and things like that. So you want to just say what your strength is and then give an example to back that up. Now, the weakness question. Everybody has weaknesses. Do not say you don't have weaknesses, because that's not true. Everybody has weaknesses. What I also do not want you to say is that your weakness is that you are perfectionist, because that reads as, I don't know, it reads as just hard to work with, anal, I'm a perfectionist, nothing's ever going to be good enough. That may not be what you mean, but that's how it comes off. So don't say you're a perfectionist and don't say you don't have any weaknesses. What you want to do is say what your weakness is and say what you are doing to rectify it. Okay, so I will give an example. I will say, well, and you know what? This also may be described as opportunities for growth instead of weaknesses. They may not ask you what your weakness is, but they may ask you what's an opportunity for growth or an opportunity for improvement. And then you can say something like, a weakness of mine is that, I take on too many things and I don't know how to say no. And so it ends up being that I get overwhelmed at times. And I have been, just very conscious of that recently. And so what I've chosen to do is just to make sure that I write everything down, what I'm going to do every day. And, I triage and I make sure that what I'm doing, I rank order in terms of importance, the things I need to get done so that I'm not overwhelmed. I have been learning to say no, and, not even just no, but no for now, but maybe trying something later. I've realized that I don't have to accept everything at this moment. And so, you'll want to give an example what you're doing to fix it, because they're going to expect you to have a weakness, but they want to know what it is and how you plan to fix it, because nobody's perfect. And then the why should we hire you question. So this is the question where you have got to brag on yourself. And I have talked to people and they're like, well, I don't want to brag on myself, just humble people. Sometimes it's even cultural, where, some people in their culture, it's not a thing to, you don't want to brag on yourself because, you want to come off humble and it's part of your culture. Well, this is the time you need to ignore that. So if somebody asks you, why should we hire you? Well, and you can answer it like this. Well, first, I'm very interested in the position. So it is something that I'm interested in. I chose to go into this field because I like this area. I believe that I'm a hard worker. I've gotten different education experiences. I've gained different experiences during the way that I think have prepared me for this role. And, I'm just excited about the opportunity to apply to it. And I think I'd be a great addition to your team. So brag on yourself. I know if you're having a hard time doing that, come work with me because I'll help you. Okay. Any questions at this point?
I don't see any in the chat. You can also feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand or just unmute yourself if you have a question, but I don't see any in the chat right now.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go on to the interviewing basics. So you want to make sure to pay attention to your nonverbal communication. So you want to have eye contact. Well, I know this slide has handshake, but I don't even know what is going on now with handshakes because of the pandemic. Or you could elbow somebody, do the elbow touch. I'm a fan of the elbow touch. But you can make sure to have eye contact with them, have just an outwardly a friendly posture, and really do not feel that you are rushed to answer all the questions. So employers are going to want to know how well you answer a question and not how fast you answer it. So if you do not know the answer to a question in an interview, it is okay to say, "Can I take a second just to think about that?" It is fine to take a second to think about it. They're not going to expect you to blurt it out. They're not going to expect you to just blurt it out like that. You can take a second to think about that, and you can even kind of talk through it. But what you're going to use are concrete and specific examples. So that's what I was talking about a little earlier. You want to have like a database or a bank of situations in your head that you have been through. So think back to your job, think back to any volunteering positions you've had, think back to jobs, your present job and former jobs. Think back to class experiences, working in groups, having to balance everything, having to balance, family and work life, and school. Just think back to the different situations that you've had in your life and think about what action you took when you had some kind of conflict and then the result that came out of it. Okay, so you'll want to have this database in your head, and that's why I was saying maybe you may want to scribble something down or write something down of situations, like a bank of answers bank of situations you can pull from. Because the most common type of interview question you're going to get is a behavioral or situational question. So actually, let me go back a slide. So the most common type is behavioral or situational questions. I am going to use those terms interchangeably, but I will say a good 60% of your interview will be a behavioral and situational question. And the way that you know that you have a behavioral question is that they start off with, "Tell me about a time when you blah, blah, blah. Tell me about a situation when you da, da, da. Tell me about a time when you blah, blah, blah." When you hear that, "tell me about time," that should tip off in your head that this is a behavioral question. And the way that you answer behavioral questions is you use what's known as the BAR method. BAR stands for background, action, and result. The way you answer a "tell me about a time" question is you want to give a little bit of background. You want to talk about what action you took and then the result that came out of it. Now, I do a lot of these mock interviews, and I will say that a good 95%, when I ask them a behavioral question, a good 95% will give me the background and they'll give me the action, and they will not give me the end result. I don't want this to be you. I want you to be in the 5%. So you want to talk about the background because they're not going to know they're not going to know your past, the background, the action you took, and then you've got to end up with the result that came out of it. So what did you learn? Was the conflict rectified? Was it, did you end up getting a raise? Like, give me the end. What happened in the end? You have to make it a round story. So here are your common behavioral or situational questions. Give me an example of a time when you faced an ethical dilemma. Give me an example of time when you took a risk and failed. Tell me about a time when you served as a member of a team, okay? Or very, very popular one is, give me an example of a time when you worked with somebody difficult. A difficult patient, like my nursing folks will get a question. Tell me, they've had their clinicals and whatnot. They will say, tell me about a time when you worked with a different patient. Or, in some of yours case, it could be a different customer if you worked in customer service or any kind of related things. You've got to be able to answer it with the background, the action, and the result. This is the most popular type of interview question you will get. So have that bank, that database of situations you can pull from in your head, and then use the BAR method. Okay. So this is the one right here. Okay. So then you make it a role play or scenario kind of situation. So another type of question is like your scenario. So if a difficult client walked in demanding a service that was unavailable, how would you respond to that person? Or if you disagree with a coworker, how would you handle something? Okay. So they may ask you for a role play, or they may describe a scenario like what's on this slide, and that you're asked to answer that. Okay, so when you get those kinds of questions, again, I don't want you all to be the deer in headlights. Okay. All right. You may also get kind of questions. What about our company interests you? See, they want to know that you did not just apply just to apply. They want to know that you are really interested and invested in this field and in working for their company. They want to know that you know about them. Okay. So this is where you pump up the ego of the company. This is where this is where you give them all the credit. Oh, I know that you're one of the leaders in such and such industry and manufacturing, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you may get one of those questions as well. Now, let's say you go through all this, you do the interview, and then you're answering your situational questions, and you're doing a role play if they ask you and all this, and then they say at the end, well, do you have any questions for us? Okay. Always ask questions. Don't say no, I don't have any questions. You will want to have maybe like 5 questions in your brain. You may end up asking only about 3 of them, but I like to tell people to have 5 just in case. So on this slide are some popular questions that I would like for you all to ask your employers. And it's not even just to be asking them questions. Remember, you are also interviewing the employer, like I said at the beginning. So you can take some context and put 2 and 2 together based off of what they answer with these questions. You can put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, maybe this isn't the place for me. I will tell you another true story happened to me. Interviewing for a position at a certain school. I'm not going to name the name of the school. I go through the interview and all this stuff and get the questions and all that good stuff. And then they ask me, do you have any questions? And I said, I said to one person, I said, what's your favorite part about working here? What do you enjoy the most about working here? And now this was for a counselor position. And she says to me, I really like my coworkers, and I like, we have, we get a couple days off, and I just really enjoy my coworkers. And to me, that said, you didn't even mention any students. This is for a counseling position at a college, and you didn't even mention any students. So I'm like, so the students kind of need to be your first priority. So to me, that was a red flag. That was a red flag to me. Like, oh well, I just I don't know. It just didn't get a good vibe from it. And I'm telling you that to say, always ask them questions. So, and plus, people love to talk about themselves anyway. So, like, if you ask them, what's your favorite part about working here? They're going to love to talk about themselves. Or, what qualities are you looking for in somebody? Flip it on them, flip it on them, because they're going to want to know about you. Like, ask about them. Why do you enjoy working for this organization? How is an employee evaluated? That's an important one too, because you don't want it to be like, you don't want the deer in headlights where the first time you hear about being evaluated is, you don't get an opportunity to change anything you might have done wrong or anything like that. So they want, if you're expecting, if they tell you that they're going to evaluate you in 30, 60, 90 days, then on that first week, you shouldn't expect anything, it's just getting more information from them, and, you're interviewing them as well. So those are some questions. Topics to avoid: do not trash your old job. Don't trash your old job. Don't trash your old boss. Even if it was the worst person to work for, even if it was the worst company ever, do not trash them. Because if they hear you trashing them, like, they're gonna be like, well, what are they gonna say about me? So don't talk about salary or benefits until you get the job offer. Do not talk about personal information. Do not ask, they should not be asking you personal information either. They should ask about, your marital status, your country of origin. They should not ask you your sexual orientation. That's none of their business. Okay, and same thing. And I will say that they can ask you if you are authorized to work in the U.S. instead of, are you a U.S. citizen? Okay, they should not ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? No, that's not ethical. They should ask you, are you legally authorized to work in the U.S.? Okay, so that's different. Okay, so ethics: be honest about your credentials. Don't lie on your resume. Don't lie in the interview. A verbal acceptance is an acceptance. Do not continue to interview after you accept the job offer. A friend of mine did that, and I got so upset with her. I helped her get a job. She texted me to say she got the job. And then the next day she was like, I have an interview. No, she accepted the job. She texted me and said she accepted the job. And then that next day she had an interview. And I was really mad at her for that. Do not do that, y'all. Don't play with people. Don't play with people. And then do not renege on an accepted job offer. Okay? All right, so as far as attire goes, you'll want to make sure to dress appropriately for the culture and the position. You'll want to have minimal or classic jewelry. So, you don't want the big clangy earrings or anything like that. Most on-site interviews do expect formal attire, and I'm gonna show you a slide next that has the formal attire. But no gum, no smoking, no club attire. I've seen interviews before where women will put on that bodycon dress and throw a blazer over it and think that it's interview attire. It is not interview attire. I have seen it. Okay, so this is right here is an example of some formal interview attire. So usually it's neutral colored or dark suits, maybe lighter tops, maybe a white top with a, tie to contrast, no crazy patterns on the tie. And so, these are just some examples here. Okay. All right. So that concludes the presentation. I have been over a lot, but just know that, we are here to help you. All you need to do is just go and schedule an appointment on the Career Services website. I have links to the job board here, our email address, and then we are also on Facebook, just Durham Tech Community College Career Services, and we are here to help. So does anybody have any questions?
don't see any hands, and I don't see anything in the chat. But just real quick, can you just share a little bit about any upcoming career services events that we might be wanting to be made aware of? Are there any hiring events that are going to be happening soon, Dr. Walker?
Yes, there are, and I'm going to pull up my calendar because I do not know the exact date, but I have them scheduled. I just don't know them by heart. Okay, so we have two virtual visits next week. On Tuesday the 1st. No, I'm sorry. I'm skipping a week. Okay. On the 24th, which is a Thursday. Yes. On the 24th, which is a Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have an organization called All Things Are Possible for Autism, which is an organization that helps with people who are on the autism spectrum, helps with activities for them. So at 1 o'clock, I'm going to send an email out early next week, if not late this week. But you can log on to the link that I give you at the day and the time, and you'll be able to talk to these employers. And then the week after that, I have 2 virtual visits scheduled. On Tuesday, March the 1st at 3 p.m. We have an organization called Self-Help. And then on Thursday, the 3rd at 1 p.m., we have the Latino Community Credit Union. All 3 of these organizations, Self-Help, the All Hands for Autism, and the Latino Community Credit Union, they are doing virtual visits. So you will be able to talk with them about finding full-time and part-time positions and possibly internships as well with them. And I will send out an email that includes like the positions, the openings, and then the more information on the organizations, and then like the time and the date to meet with them.
Thank you. So we basically need to stay plugged in to your page on the college's website, and also following the Durham Tech Career Services on Facebook.
Yes.
So class, please take advantage of the services. As Dr. Walker mentioned, there are people that pay hundreds of dollars, sometimes hundreds of dollars an hour to have someone to review their resume, to review their cover letter, if they have to have a cover letter, or just to do the mock interview, so this is very valuable information here that we are providing as an institution, and we'd love for you to be able to take advantage of it while you're here. So thank you so much, Dr. Walker, for your time and for, stopping by to be with us today. I'm going to stop the